2019 was a huge year in pop culture, as not only did we have the grand finale of an 11-year saga when Avengers Endgame broke the box office, but we also saw the finale to Game of Thrones. Meanwhile, over in the world of wrestling, we saw women rise to heights we had never seen before, all while a longtime fan favorite underdog finally got his shot at the big time. But how did it all happen? Well, join us today as we take a deep dive into the entire story from start to finish in the WWE in 2019, a year in review. When we last left off, Brock Lesnar was Universal Champion on Raw, Daniel Bryan was WWE Champion over on SmackDown, and elsewhere on the same brand, Becky Lynch was undergoing a meteoric rise towards the main event scene. But before we deal with any of that in 2019, we first have to venture over to developmental, because after NXT UK held TakeOver Blackpool on January 12th, a show which saw Pete Dunne defend the United Kingdom title against Joe Coffey and Toni Storm defeat Rhea Ripley to become the new UK Women's Champion, it was back stateside. And that was because at TakeOver Phoenix on January 26th, not only would Tommaso Ciampa and Shayna Baszler successfully defend their men's and women's world titles against Aleister Black and Bianca Belair respectively, but Matt Riddle would move up the ladder with a win over Cassius Ohno. So this left the main roster with big shoes to fill the following night at the Royal Rumble then, and it appears they were well aware of this because, in the undercard of a packed show, The Miz and Shane McMahon won the SmackDown Tag Team titles from the bar, all before Ronda Rousey fended off the challenge of Sasha Banks in the Raw Women's title bout. Then, following that, the two men's world titles were put on the line when Daniel Bryan got the better of AJ Styles, and Brock Lesnar did likewise with Finn Balor. But of course, neither of these bouts were what people had on their minds after the show, because in the real main events, Seth Rollins lasted for 43 minutes to win the men's rumble, and Becky Lynch finally got her due when she last eliminated Charlotte Flair to win the women's. And that then meant the only question left was, who would she choose to challenge at WrestleMania? Well, as it happened, fans wouldn't have to wait long to find this out, because the very next night on Raw, Lynch came out to confront Ronda Rousey and stake her claim at the belt. Yes, it was the match everyone wanted after having been robbed of it the November prior. But before this story could develop any further, it was back to NXT, as on February 2nd, the Worlds Collide show pitted the Black and Gold brand, their UK counterpart, and 205 Live against each other in a tournament which was eventually won by the Velveteen Dream when he beat Tyler Bate in the finals. And with that now over, things could return to the main roster where, on February 17th, they held Elimination Chamber. And here, two major moments occurred, as not only did Sasha Banks and Bayley become the inaugural Women's Tag Team Champions, but Kofi Mania was born. Why was Kofi Kingston so popular all of a sudden? Well, in the main event WWE title match held inside of the titular chamber, it was originally supposed to be Daniel Bryan defending against AJ Styles, Randy Orton, Jeff Hardy, Samoa Joe, and Mustafa Ali. That said, once Ali got a legit injury days prior to the bout, it meant Kofi would have to be subbed in as a last-minute replacement instead. And what a great decision this turned out to be, because it was here the New Day member put on an absolutely star-making performance, one so good that come the end of it, Vince McMahon was forced to change his WrestleMania plans. That's right, despite losing the bout, Kofi got so over during it that the original WWE title match at the Showcase of the Immortals between Bryan and Kevin Owens was scrapped, with Kingston being inserted as the new challenger instead. And he wasn't the only one being inserted into a title match at the last minute, as over on Raw, following Becky Lynch's kayfabe knee injury, she was removed from the planned Ronda Rousey contest and instead replaced with Charlotte Flair. Not that the man was ready to go down so easy though. No, in one last gasp attempt to re-secure her spot, she'd challenge the Queen at March 10th's Fastlane, with the stipulation being that if she could win, then the whole thing would become a triple threat. And win she most certainly did here, though not without a little help from Rousey herself, of course. But why would the baddest woman on the planet want to add Lynch to the match? Well, because she still had unfinished business with her. Elsewhere on the card, meanwhile, the Boss and Hug Connection defended their women's tag team titles against Nia Jax and Tamina. The Miz and Shane McMahon came to blows after losing the SmackDown tag team titles to the Usos, and following his return to action, the now cancer-free Roman Reigns reunited with Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins to take on Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, and Baron Corbin. Unfortunately, though, this would be the last time Ambrose appeared on a WWE pay-per-view because, as a result of him neglecting to sign a new contract, he'd be gone by the time the summer came around. Still, at least the Shield would continue to dominate Raw for a while, all while over on SmackDown, Kofi Kingston was completing his set of trials in order to make sure he got his shot at the American Dragon. And that would lead us into WrestleMania weekend, a weekend which started off strong when on April 5th, TakeOver New York took place. Yes, this one didn't go as originally planned, as it was supposed to first see the blow-off to the Johnny Gargano-Tommaso Ciampa feud following Gargano's return to the side of light. But that wasn't meant to be in the end, because in the days leading up to the show, the Blackheart picked up a serious neck injury and so had to vacate the NXT World title. So at the last minute, Adam Cole was added to the mix as both he and Johnny Wrestling battled it out over the now vacant title. And this ended up being a blessing in disguise, because the two had one of the best matches of the year here, a match which ended up with the babyface finally getting the big win. Elsewhere on the show, meanwhile, not only would Aleister Black and Ricochet get a proper NXT standoff when they were defeated by the War Raiders, but Walter would end Pete Dunne's 685-day reign as United Kingdom champion after a chop-heavy war. Yes, it was a hell of a show, and this momentum would continue on into the next night too, as new Hall of Fame inductees D-Generation X, the Honky Tonk Man, and Tori Wilson all got their moments in the spotlight. Then the night after this, it was time for the grand finale, as a mammoth 7-hour-long WrestleMania 35 started off with Seth Rollins making short work of Brock Lesnar to become the new Universal Champion. Following that, the Usos finally got a main card WrestleMania spot, Shane McMahon beat The Miz in a Falls Count Anywhere match, and the Iconics shocked the world by defeating the Boss and Hug Connection, Nia Jackson Tamina, and Beth Phoenix and Natalya to become the new Women's Tag Team Champions. But that was far from the end of the night, because next, arguably the emotional highlight took place when the power of Kofi Mania overcame the odds as Kofi Kingston pinned Daniel Bryan to win the WWE title. And while this would have been enough for one WrestleMania alone, it still didn't stop things from carrying on for a while yet, as once Roman Reigns beat Drew McIntyre and Triple H gave Batista the retirement match he'd been craving for years, Baron Corbin formally put Kurt Angle out to pasture. Then, Finn Balor won the Intercontinental title from Bobby Lashley, all before the main event took stage when, for the first time ever, the women headlined the biggest show of the year. Yes, many at the time wanted to see a one-on-one match between the biggest babyface in the company, Becky Lynch, and the biggest mainstream star, Ronda Rousey, but after winning the SmackDown Women's title in the weeks leading up to the show, Charlotte Flair entered the mix too. Not that it mattered much in the end though, because once it was over, the man got the pinfall over Rousey to become both the Raw and SmackDown Women's Champion in a moment which echoed the big Daniel Bryan win from 5 years prior. And it's just as well this happened, because with the company now losing the Shield, they needed a big-time moment to carry them through the rest of the spring. That's right, time had finally come up on Dean Ambrose's contract, and so, after a special The Shield's Final Chapter show on April 21st, he'd exit stage right. And this all led us into Money in the Bank on May 19th, a show where Kofi Kingston and Seth Rollins both managed to keep hold of their men's world titles against Kevin Owens and AJ Styles, respectively. As for Becky Lynch, however, well, she'd only get half lucky, as while she did successfully defend her Raw Women's title against Lacey Evans, she would lose her SmackDown one to Charlotte Flair. That said, Flair's reign proved to be short-lived too, because after winning the Women's Money in the Bank contract earlier in the night, Bayley would cash in here and take the title home for herself. Meanwhile, in the Men's Money in the Bank ladder match, it was Brock Lesnar who came out on top, with this giving him a title shot anytime he chose to cash it in. And while he was weighing up his options then, over on NXT, the developmental brand was preparing for June 1st's TakeOver 25, a show which, when it eventually came, saw the Velveteen Dream win a North American title match against Tyler Breeze, Shayna Baszler submit Io Shirai in the women's title bout, and Adam Cole finally reached the top of the mountain himself when he beat Johnny Gargano to become the new NXT World Champion. And after this, we saw WWE Super Showdown live from Jeddah, with this card giving us Randy Orton versus Triple H, Shane McMahon versus Roman Reigns, and Goldberg almost permanently end The Undertaker when he executed a botched jackknife powerbomb on him. Still, at least things got better once the company returned home, as at June 23rd Stomping Grounds, Roman got a win over Drew McIntyre, Kofi Kingston racked up another title defense over Dolph Ziggler, Bayley defeated Alexa Bliss, Becky Lynch defeated Lacey Evans, and in the main event, Seth Rollins retained his Universal title in a match against Baron Corbin, where Lacey Evans was the special guest referee. Then on July 14th's Extreme Rules, we saw Becky and her real-life fiancé Seth Rollins take on both Lacey and Baron Corbin in a mixed tag team match, in a show that also gave us Kofi Kingston get a big win over Samoa Joe. The Revival retained their Raw tag team titles against the Usos, The Undertaker have his last ever live in-ring match when he teamed with Roman Reigns to beat Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre, and Brock Lesnar end the night by successfully cashing in his Money in the Bank contract on the Architect to become the new Universal Champion. That's right, Brock was back on top again whether fans liked it or not. But while this was divisive, something most fans could agree was great was the series of Firefly Funhouse segments Bray Wyatt had been putting out over on Raw as he gradually began teasing the arrival of a terrifying new incarnation. Before this incarnation would be revealed, however, a SmackDown special entitled Smackville took place in Nashville on July 27th and saw Shinsuke Nakamura defend his Intercontinental title against Mustafa Ali and Kevin Owens make short work of Elias. Then once that was out of the way, it was onwards to SummerSlam weekend where, before the big show itself came around, NXT held TakeOver Toronto on August 10th. And on this show, not only did a newly heel Io Shirai show everyone how it was done when she beat Candice LeRae, but 4 titles would be successfully defended when the Street Profits beat the Undisputed Era, the Velveteen Dream got the better of Pete Dunne and Roderick Strong, Shayna Baszler tapped out Mia Yim, and in a 2 out of 3 falls encounter, Adam Cole bested Johnny Gargano by a score of 2-1. Could the main roster live up to this? Well, we'd find out the following evening, as in front of a packed crowd at the Scotiabank Arena, things started off strong when Becky Lynch retained her Raw Women's title during a hard-fought battle against Natalya. After that, Goldberg attempted to recover from his poor showing in Saudi with a quick win over Dolph Ziggler, and Bayley defeated Ember Moon to keep hold of her SmackDown Women's title. But that wasn't even close to the highlight of the night, as once Kevin Owens got a win over Shane McMahon, Trish Stratus made her return to the ring in order to put on a great match against Charlotte Flair, with this maybe even being Trish's greatest ever in-ring performance. And when this was over, in the first of 3 main events, Kofi Kingston successfully slayed the dragon of Randy Orton in order to keep the WWE title around his waist, and in his in-ring debut, Bray Wyatt's new incarnation, The Fiend, stole the show when he demolished Finn Balor and sent him packing back to NXT. Then following that, the show's closer saw Seth Rollins regain the Universal title from Brock Lesnar in a great match that lasted just over 13 minutes. And this win painted a target on Seth's back again going forward because over the next few weeks, Braun Strowman would emerge as the next challenger to the Architect's crown. Of course, Rollins and Strowman wouldn't face off against each other quite yet, though. No, while they were busy winning the tag team titles together over on Raw, in NXT UK, TakeOver Cardiff was taking place on August 31st. And there, after Cesaro and Ilya Dragunov had a fantastic showing, and Walter put on a Match of the Year contender against Tyler Bate, 2 new champions would be crowned when Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster won the tag team belts. Then, Kaylee Ray beat Toni Storm to become women's champ. And after this, we saw the Clash of Champions pay-per-view on September 15th. With the main event here being Seth Rollins versus Braun Strowman for the Universal title, where the champ retained, and the undercard giving us some great matches as we saw Bayley get the win over Charlotte Flair during the SmackDown Women's title match, and a newly heel Sasha Banks do the same over Becky Lynch in the Raw one. That said, as this latter victory happened via disqualification, the man kept her title, just as Shinsuke Nakamura did when he put his Intercontinental belt up for grabs against The Miz. And the same could be said for Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross too when they defended their women's tag team titles against Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. As for the SmackDown Tag Team titles, however, well, the incoming champs wouldn't fare as well because, after a 10-minute war, the New Day ended up losing to the Revival. And that would only be the beginning of the stable's woes as it happened because, just a few weeks later, on October 4th's 20th anniversary episode of SmackDown, Kofi Mania came to a crushing end in the worst way possible when Kofi Kingston was defeated by Brock Lesnar in just 8 seconds. And this sense of fan frustration would build even further when, at October 6th's Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, Bray Wyatt would take on Seth Rollins in what many of the audience were calling the worst Cell match of all time. But at least it wasn't all bad here. No, in the undercard things fared better as there, not only did Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks have a banger inside of the cage, but Daniel Bryan cemented his new face turn by teaming up with Roman Reigns to take on Luke Harper and Eric Rowan. But as the American Dragon was shifting to the side of the good guys once more, over on Raw, Bayley was going in the opposite direction. And that's because after choosing to align herself with her old friend Sasha Banks again, she suddenly found herself a heel for the first time. Of course, this was a good thing in the long run though, because it allowed her to shake things up right when she needed to the most. It's just a shame she wouldn't get to show what she could do at the next big show of the year then, because even if the women were going to have a match in Saudi for the first time at October 31st's Crown Jewel, the role model wouldn't be involved in this. No, instead that honor would go to Lacey Evans and Natalya in a history-making moment. Elsewhere on that card, Brock Lesnar beat UFC star Cain Velasquez in a one-shot appearance, Mansoor got a hometown win over Cesaro, Tyson Fury scored a victory during his boxer versus wrestler match against Braun Strowman, and in the main event, The Fiend ended Seth Rollins' 81-day reign with the Universal title. After the show, however, the big story wasn't that there was a new champion. No, it was that the plane carrying most of the wrestlers back to America for SmackDown would be delayed. And this meant that due to the roster being severely depleted, SmackDown would see a huge number of NXT superstars get called up en masse for one night only, with this episode giving us some great action, including matches like Tommaso Ciampa vs. The Miz, Rhea Ripley and Tegan Nox vs. Fire and Desire, and the NXT champion Adam Cole defeating Daniel Bryan in the main event of the show. And luckily, this would play well into the next pay-per-view because with Survivor Series coming up on November 24th, it was all about brand supremacy. So after TakeOver War Games took place on the 23rd and saw not only Team Ripley stand victorious over Team Baszler, but Team Ciampa get the win over the Undisputed Era in the two titular cage matches, the next night, Survivor Series saw the Black and Gold brand be put over great as North American Champion Roderick Strong scored a victory over US Champion AJ Styles and Intercontinental Champion Shinsuke Nakamura. Then, in the main event, NXT Women's Champion Shayna Baszler put down both Raw Women's Champion Becky Lynch and SmackDown Women's Champion Bayley. Elsewhere, meanwhile, all three men's world titles were successfully defended when Adam Cole beat Pete Dunne, Brock Lesnar demolished Rey Mysterio, and The Fiend put an end to the threat of Daniel Bryan. But while that would be the last appearance of The Fiend on pay-per-view this year, it wouldn't be the last we'd see of Wyatt himself, as after another Starrcade special and a tribute to the Troops show, December 15th saw TLC, Tables, Ladders, and Chairs emanate live from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And there, after briefly reverting back to his Mr. Rogers-style children's television host persona, the Universal Champion beat The Miz in just under 7 minutes. Then, once that was done, Aleister Black left his dark room to face off against Buddy Murphy, Bobby Lashley and Rusev took their feud over Lana to pay-per-view, and Roman Reigns ate his last loss in years at the hands of Baron Corbin. Then over on NXT on December 18th, Rhea Ripley would dethrone Shayna Baszler to win the brand's women's title in a moment that helped take her career to the next level. That's right, this was the first major sign that Rhea was going to be a major player in WWE and someone to keep an eye on for the following decade. Yes, things were certainly looking up for the future of WWE. After all, not only was the main roster looking strong with some great main event talent, but NXT was giving us the stars of tomorrow. Little did we know at the time, though, things were about to be shaken up in a major way the very next year.